Hey everybody, Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff, back with another update on the Deluge. This is my hobby progress blog, or vlog I guess technically, chronicling what I'm doing for the most ambitious project that I personally have taken. I know people have done much more. This is my next step on the hobby level. And is with the Maggotkin of Nurgle, kind of pirate nautical themed army. So what I'm going to do now is transition over to my slideshow format. Again, this is very relaxed. Go ahead and pull up a seat, grab some models, and watch along. I'm going to go over all the progress we got done. I think it was only last week or so that I put the last one out. So let's dig into it. So this is the first of the Nurgle Pirates progress reports. So the first one, of course, that I did before, the video before, was just kind of my inspiration, the ideas that I had going into the project. But this time I actually have some tangible results, so let's dig into those. So progress so far, we have built and painted the Feculent gnarlmaw. The hobby supply store was rated, and I'll go through all these in a little bit more detail. The rollers came in and bases were made. The ferryman, who was my Lord of Blights, was built and painted. And just the other night, 5 Blight Kings were completed. So this is kind of my outline for the show. I'm going to go through what I was able to accomplish. So on the screen right now for you is the gnarlmaw. So my envision for this, as to kind of recap the inspiration video, was I wanted to have the wood look very like desaturated, like a driftwood, if you've ever seen that, or you can Google search it. If you're not near a beach, it's just a very, like, all the vibrancy and the color of the wood is just gone. It's been sucked away, sunburnt out, that kind of stuff. So the wood on this is extremely, almost boring looking, but that makes everything else kind of pop. Unfortunately, my light box was on the fritz, so I was having some trouble getting better pictures. I apologize. But basically what I did was, I did a few modifications. If you look up in the top left, you will see that I trimmed off one of the branches and put the plague sensor from the, the gnaw holes kit, where it has like a little miasma coming off of the pot. Also to the slight left of the 3, pus things, there's a rat on the ledge, and over on the right, of course, is a little nurgling. I thought that was fun. And a little bit of scroll work right here. I guess you can see my mouse. And basically, other than that, I didn't do a ton of actual conversions. Future Feculent gnarlmaws that I do, because Nurgle can summon them, I want to do one that has a lot of anchors hanging from it. Still have to source some anchors. And I want to do one that has no limbs, but goes up vertically and acts like a lighthouse. And so those are kind of the visions that I have. I love the way that the driftwood kind of came out. And it complements these kind of like floral colors that I have on all of the fungal growths really, really well. I love it. It is pretty cool looking. So let's move on. Here's a few close-ups of some other stuff. To get some of these painted, pretty simple. It's a lot of use of contrast paints and just a few other effects. So for example, the plague sensor thing, it is 2 washes, Colia green shade, Bale tan green, and then black Templar wash just put over those. That's how I made the coals. Then on to the Nurgling. He just comes from, I think, the Glotkin kit. I'm not sure. And then the gunk is just Nurgle's rot all along the gums here. The color really pops, which is a great contrast to the kind of, the desaturated, decolorized wood, like the driftwood. So, next thing on my list that I put there of achievements is the hobby store was rated. And so this is just a list of the supplies that I got. If anyone's curious about how to do this stuff, very simply, 2 things of shells, just different, I don't know, they're just called hobby shells. Incredibly tiny little seashells on both sides of them. The one on the right has some more interesting shapes, some are a little bit bigger, that kind of stuff. I grabbed myself some actual real, they call them carver sets, but it's just sculpting tools up here. Because I didn't actually own any. And then this is super interesting. So the dry plants woodland scenic thing. So I was trying to find a way to do seaweed, and there's really not a lot of scale modeling that does seaweed. So I was kind of struggling for a while. There's a few examples. There's one on, I think it's Beasts of War, where some guy like cut strips of paper, and I just didn't really care for it too much. So what I did when I saw this, if you're not familiar with it, people who do model railroading will often buy a plastic tree that has no leaves on it, and then they can go to these woodland and scenic little bags and stuff like that and kind of like pick out the leaves that they want and then attach them. And so this way you can do mixes, you can do all kinds of vibrant stuff. But what I did was I took this is for just like kind of dried out dead plants you'd see in like a desert scene sometimes, or vines that have died. So I took it, I shredded it, I put a mix of water and PVA glue together, and then just made this like gunk out of all that stuff together. And when that gunk dries and the PVA kind of like, contracts a little bit and kind of goes away and becomes clear, all of a sudden it looks pretty good. I'm going to show you an example here in a little bit of what that looks like. But I think it looks fantastic. It looks certainly organic. It doesn't look like perfect seaweed, but I couldn't find a product that looked good, to be honest with you. And then the rollers came in. So if you don't know, in the last video I did for inspiration, everything was kind of in a weird standstill because I didn't have my wooden base roller from Green Stuff World, like the wooden plank one. And I'll get some better pictures here for you in a second. But basically it came in, and it came in on Friday. On Saturday I was supposed to go to a 3-game tournament with Jack from Rolling Ones. And I was like, I got so excited that it came in. I was like, I cannot go tomorrow. I have to do this. And so on Friday night, I stayed up till, I think, 1:30 in the morning and just cranked out a ton of bases. And so it was a learning experience. I've never used a roller before. I liked it. It just took a little bit of getting used to keep the green stuff from sticking to it as it rolled up and that kind of thing. I'll do a more in-depth video talking about that because I think they're really cool. One thing is that I think it helps me that I'm Nurgle because, as you're pulling it off of the roller or as the roller's kind of, you're picking it off the table, that kind of stuff, it kind of warps a little bit. But I think that actually works to my advantage because you'll see some of the boards on these guys that look really weird, but they fit with the kind of corrupted Nurgle chaos thing. If I was doing like an Empire army, they might warrant something a little bit more uniform and like regular, but this didn't really. So yeah. So looking at the bases here, you see a few things here. Most obvious is the pack of skulls that GW sells. There's a bunch of skulls on on many of them. And then you'll also see some of this like random color. So up here is gray. On a lot of these there's tan. That is actually texture paint. I wanted to paint something that kind of looked like mold. Like a very thick moss type thing. In Seattle, we have quite a bit of moss growing on darn near every single roof. It's invasive. If there's just a lot of humidity and dampness and rain and that kind of stuff, moss tends to grow everywhere. And so I wanted that. And I was like, well, if I do it when it's green stuff and then I paint it and prime it, it will look different. I can paint it however I want color-wise. And so that is exactly what I did. So I just threw down some basic texture paint. The Astro Granite actually worked fantastic because it's nice, has a lot of texture to it. You can dry brush it very, very easily. Obviously I said the skulls. I put a few seashells on a few bases. I didn't want every base to have one because then it wouldn't be special and it would kind of lose some of the magic. And you can see my PVA glue and not seaweed mix just kind of watered up on some of these, and that's what it looks like while it's drying. If you try to do this, I will say you gotta let it sit overnight. I cranked these out. Like I said, I was up till 1 in the morning doing them, but they were done with that part a little bit earlier. And yeah, they were ready to go the next morning, but it took a long time to get all of it kind of settled firmly. And yeah, that's basically it. So what I tried to do was mix it up so that no two bases were exactly the same. There's a few where there's just have moss or a skull. I have a few nurgling bits on some of them, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I wanted it to be varied enough that, this is going to go across 20 or so Blight Kings, that I can make a unit that each one's unique, and that's certainly doable here. Here is a picture, if you are curious. I'm sorry I had to zoom in. The picture took a weird size. I don't know why, but I had to blow it up really, really big. So here you can see the actual texture of the roller. And if you look, no, this wasn't a pretty good example, but some of them are a little more warped than this. But I thought the texture came out perfectly. It took to dry brushing like a dream. And so what I did for the dry brushing, if you look at the GW painting app for wood, just wood brown, I did that. So it's a dryad bark, like Gorak brown or something like that, some of the G brown. And then instead of the final color they suggested, I did Dryad bark, so a little bit lighter. And on top of that, I went over very, very lightly. You can see the upper areas right up here towards the top left with Carrick stone, just something that's even a little bit lighter, just to add some, color diversity. Didn't do it across the entire thing, just picked one spot on the base and dry brushed it. And then you can see this dark green spot. Well, I wanted the wood to look like it was gross, right? Gross, rotted wood that hasn't been cleaned right. It's starting to crumple on the edges. And so what I did was I took my Militarum green contrast paint, did not thin it down at all, and just put it in there. All these planks have some little spot. I tried to get it towards either an edge or covering like one specific end of a plank of wood to get it to look like, that specific piece was rotted out. And I think it worked pretty well. Of course, towards the bottom center, you can see that is what the seaweed ultimately looks like. It is, what is it? Deathworld Forest, Elysian Green, and Ogre and Camo, I think, is the highest color. And then I worked in a bunch of Nurgle's Rot on top of it just to kind of give it that slimy, nasty look to it. And of course, to the upper top center is my fingerprint. If you need to falsify a crime or something like that, you're more than welcome to do that. And that's basically how the bases turned out. They all look pretty much like that in terms of the texture. But yeah, I think it turned out pretty well. And so now we come to the actually completed models. I'm very excited about this. So on the first day of painting, right, so Saturday, I had a hobby marathon, if you saw the paint-a-thon thing, 5 hours of pure hobby, where I painted all 22 of the bases that I created. And then, to cap it off, I built and painted this guy. And I love him. He is the Lord of Blights. And I'll walk through kind of let me see. Oh yeah, so many kits used. That's what I put. And so I want to just chat about what I used for this guy, because a lot of people have actually asked about it. So going from top to bottom on the model. Okay, obviously you have the Nurgling Parrot on top. And so he is a Nurgling. I think he's from the Glotkin kit. He's certainly in a weird sitting pose. So I know it's from a bigger kit. I'm not sure if it's the Great Unclean one or the Glotkin. His face, where that beak came from, I actually clipped off the face of the Nurgling and clipped off the face of a Corvus Cabal Cabalite from Warcry and glued the two together with some green stuff. And so that's why he has a little beak. Below him, I cut off the kind of the executioner arm, the hanging heads the death's heads that were hanging off the side. And that entire structure that comes from the left and the angle is all from I believe it's the Nautical kit. They have a few of these little sensors in there. And so I thought that was cool. That kind of like an anglerfish, you would see this light kind of moving around and then you wouldn't know it was attached to this guy. So below that, obviously, there is the head, which comes from the Puscoil Blight Lord kit. If you didn't know, I was just looking at the sprue and I found this one hooded head. I was like, oh, I didn't envision him with a hood, but it sounds really cool. So I went with that. And what else? The left shoulder, our left shoulder, and the tip of his hammer both come from Orc kits from 40k. The shoulder pad is from a Knob kit where it has like you can see in the bottom right as well, the spikes all kind of jagged out and that kind of stuff. And then the tip of the weapon is actually the top portion of a jetpack from Storm Boys. So there's that. And then the telescope or the looking glass here. I'm not sure there's a piece of hair on there. I'm sorry about that. This looking glass here actually comes from a like a D&D accessories kit that I just kind of found at a local game store. I was like, yes, this is amazing. There's a few little things in there that'll pop up, and I'll point those out later. Unfortunately, it's obstructed by this angle here, but you can just make it out. His right leg is, I trimmed off the entire leg, put in the tip of a Storm Fiend like drill arm that they have, like the warpstone drill things, and then green stuff, a bunch of like rotted skin around it, so he looks like he has a peg leg. And we painted it with a wood color, so it looks like a giant splinter coming out of his skin. It's very, very cool. And then these two little like flowy tabard pendant things come from the Clan Pestilence kit. And I made the little medals myself. They did nothing. They're just little green stuff discs, basically, kind of jammed on there. And so that is the Ferryman of Nurgle. Now, I did say before, the color choice, I went with a navy blue. This is actually Night Lord's blue and khaki. So yeah, this picture doesn't quite, I don't think, explain it, present it well. I think it looks much better in person, but that is basically it. And after that, I went full bore into a bunch of Blight Kings. Sorry, I had a little hiccup there. Now, talking about the Blight Kings, we did these on air. I really, really enjoy them. I'm just going to show off kind of a few things about them. A few people had asked me, like, I put these pictures up online, and I got several comments that said, I thought these were supposed to be like nautical guys or pirates. Like, where's the peg legs and the hooks and the eye patches? I was like, well, first of all, they're all wearing helmets, almost all of them. But also, here's the thing. When it comes to those kinds of conversions and those details, less is always more. And when I say that, what I mean is, if everyone has a peg leg and an eye patch and a hook, it ceases to be fun, right? It should be a little like reward for looking at a unit closely and like trying to find its theme and looking for those elements. And so having it be too easy to see, easy to spot, too prevalent in an army kind of spoils the fun a little bit. So these first 5 don't have much. Now, what I will say is that every single model, let me see here, is converted in some way. Now, when I say converted, it's not really converted. There's some green stuff on them, okay? Every single one of them, to add to the nautical theme, has barnacles on them. Like they're staying so still and they're so slow that the growths of the ocean are literally attaching themselves to these guys. You can't see it on the bell guy. It's actually on the back side of the bell. But the other ones, I'll point out where they are. And they came out pretty well. It's just a little bit of green stuff and a few patterns to match barnacles that we find in the real world. And that's pretty much it. Same paint scheme across these guys. And they are looking pretty cool. You can see in the bottom center here with the Nurgling, that is actually the scheme I'm going to have for all my demons, where it is this white, stark white, very pale dead flesh skin, and purple kind of in the recesses a little bit. Little Magos purple to kind of bring it in. Yellow eyes and sick nasty teeth and horns. So that is the plan. And I think they pop really, really well. I really did enjoy this guy. So I'm going to show you the other ones here. The guy on the left, I could have put an eye patch on him. I was really considering it, but I only have a few. Like the Blight King set only comes with a few guys that have their faces exposed. A lot of them are wearing helmets. So for this one, I was like, no, I like his, rotting looking face. We'll keep that the way it is. So I did that. Let's see. On the right, you can see the barnacles that I did. So you have them on the shoulder pads. And these actually look fairly similar. If you've seen some of the bigger species of barnacle that are on the side of ships, it has that white, again, very desaturated color, and just kind of glues onto any kind of flat surface. And so that's what I went for. And again, here you can see it on the left guy's chest piece. Got a barnacle there. And that pretty much sums it up. So lots of weathering effects to make the steel look old. Again, they're sailing over water. If you don't live in a coastal region, or a saltwater region, I should clarify, salt water eats things up. And so a lot of stuff would be rusted. It would be falling apart. Just kind of tears it all apart. It just does. One thing I didn't even think about was on the right side, the banner bearer. He's standing on a rock. There's always one model with that pose standing on a rock. And so I thought about it last minute. I was like, oh, I'll just make it look like seaweed. And actually, in person, it looks okay, but I was actually kind of bummed I didn't think about that. I could have attached seaweed and stuff like that before I primed them. So I'll try to do that for the other ones going forward. But all in all, I'm very happy with my first models, and I'm excited to do some more, honestly. Now, for me, this is a good, important step. When I was coming up with the idea for this army, good friend Jack from Real Only Ones suggested that I come up with a list. And that is to say, first of all, for me as a builder and a painter, have a goal. Like I'm working on this, I'm crossing things off a list, very motivating for me. but also that we have a lot of local events, weekend events, usually 3-round tournaments, at least once a month. And I don't normally participate in those, but I want to more. I really do want to, certainly more in 2020, when I have this army like done. And so coming up with a list that I can take to events and go middle of the pack is kind of what I'm aiming for, to be honest with you. Is kind of the goal, right? Start there, and then I can do whatever flavorful lore stuff that I want. Eventually, I want a whole bunch of plague bearers that are like crewmen, like one's mopping the floor, one's rowing the boat, that kind of stuff. But for right now, like a good focus is get me something where I can go to an event, meet people, show off my models, hopefully win Best Painted, and come in middle of the pack and have a great day, right? And that's a great goal. So this list is what I'm kind of building towards right now. It's not optimal by any means. It's just kind of something that I can do. So that would be a Lord of Blights, which I already have done. The Lord of Afflictions, who I do have. Haven't built him yet. With those respective artifacts. Harbinger of Decay, which I got, I think I showed that off. I got that unexpectedly. So I was just like, yeah, let's paint him up. I'll make him part of the hobby goal. And I do have a sum total of 20 Blight Kings as of now. 5 are painted. And then also 2 Puscoil Blight Lords that are unassembled, unpainted. And from my start collecting Nurgle Demons box, I have 3 Plague Drones. And I'll also get the Plague Bearers done so I can summon them in units of 5. And then the Blight Cyst is the battalion I'll taking. Now, if you're really looking at this keenly, you'll know that this list is at 1,740 points. You're like, how come you're leaving 160 points on the table, Doug? Well, the idea is I plan to... sorry, it's more than that. More points than that. But the idea is I plan to take the Beasts of Chaos warband that just released for Warhammer Underworlds. And so that is the idea there, where they're going to ally in, and because they can, because they're Beasts of Chaos. They're going to ally in, and they have a spell that gives, basically, it hurts the enemy and gives my units +1 to hit them. And this is sort of a counterbalance because the Putrid Blight Kings are in a weird place right now where they're one of the few of the newer books that still has a rule that says, if you roll a 6+ to hit, well, that means any negative modifiers to hit take away their exploding hits ability. So when I think about that, initially I was like, I don't want to be power gamey, but the truth of the matter is it's not power gamey. It's just, I'm looking at this as saying, this is my way of preventing my abilities from being taken away, rather than me trying to, power game or I'm not swinging for that sweet 5+ exploding stuff. I'm looking to just keep my 6, basically, is where I'm at. So that's the list that I have, and I actually have every model for that all ready to go. And actually, I also own another Blight King, not Blight King, another the Glotkin that I could put somewhere, but he's a big old pricey model. So then, as far as what's next, that's what I've completed, and that was my roadmap to success here. So on the desk right now, I have 10 more Blight Kings primed, and I kind of want to do those basically to, one, get my battle line taken care of so I can do games, even 1K games, just have dudes to play with. And also because I have the bases, again, I did 22 in a session, so I have all those ready to go. Let's just crank them out, get them out there. It'll be kind of fun. I'm going to do another base bonanza, as I'm calling it, where now that I have a list in mind and a direction to go towards, and I know what I like about the bases and ways to improve, I'm going to crank out the bases for everything else on that list and the 10 Plague Bearers. So a lot of bases are going to get done. I am going to make custom bases for the Warhammer Underworlds warband, and I will have to find some different size bases though, because I don't have any extras on hand. So that'll be a little challenge, but it's okay. I'll get there. After the Blight Kings, just to kind of give myself a little bit of a painting break, I'm going to go ahead and do that Beast of Chaos warband. I am going to do conversions on them though. Like, for example, replacing the icon of like the goat skull on the guy's staff with like a Nurgle symbol, that kind of stuff. Nothing too big. I really like the models the way they are, and they're very smartly put together. I probably will do a lot of conversion work on the leader and maybe the Bestigor that comes with him. The Ungor, I'm really not worried about that. I might do some like tattoos on the paint job or something, but honestly, they're not my high priority. You know, they're there to die, basically. So that's kind of it for that. After that is going to be back to the actual Nurgle stuff with the Lord of Afflictions and Puscoils. I have 5 more Blight Kings after all of that, and then Demons for Days, where I have the 3 Blight Drones and the 10 Plague Bearers I want to get done so I can bring some of that stuff to events too. So that is pretty much it. So friends, I hope you enjoyed that. I have a lot of ideas for what's going forward. I'm still very motivated. I'm glad I did the paint-a-thon that one day instead of going to the event to kind of get my creative juices flowing and just kind of out there and start producing something. I'm someone who is very motivated by results. So, you know, I had all these ideas about what I wanted it to look like, but it wasn't until I started actually rolling the bases, putting the shells on, painting them up, that I got to like experience and get excited for the project in a new way. And so I'm very excited about that. I'm kind of in a mad rush to get the army to not even a 2,000, just a 1,000 point level. Because to me, if you don't know, if you're kind of in a hobby slump, playing games motivates me to paint. And so, you know, that gets me excited about an army. I get to see what's good, what's bad, and kind of get excited about different combinations, and makes me want to reroad the battle tome when I get to see the art and all that kind of stuff. And so that's definitely something that I'm very mindful of, because I don't want to get burnt out on this army. Not like the Skaven Pestilence stuff really burned me out, because it took so much to be able to actually play the game that I couldn't anymore. And so with these guys, you know, I do another unit, and that gives me my 2 battle line and a hero, and I can start kind of doing stuff from there and start playing games. So I'm very excited about it. And so for all the folks who are saying I'll sell it in 3 months, you're wrong. I'll prove you're wrong. One other thing is that I'm going to be saving up for a boat. And when I mean a boat, I don't mean like your grandma's boat that's just like, you know, a little schooner or whatever like that. There's a gentleman who sells 3D printed terrain for like role-playing and that kind of stuff. And he has a boat that is about 2 feet long. And it's about 6 to 8 inches wide. A lot of flat deck space. It's got the 2 the towers for holding up the sails. I don't know what they're called. But basically, that's going to be my display board at some point. So it's going to be a couple months down the road. I'm going to grab that, Nurgle-fy the heck out of it, and make that that is going to be the Deluge, the ship itself. So that's all coming in the pipeline. That's way far in the future, though. So until then, I'm working on an army to crew that ship. So anyway, if you have any questions about the project or any thoughts that I could do to improve things, go ahead and leave in the comments down below. I'm very excited about this, and I hope that you are all excited about the journey as well. So take it easy, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.